Sort of. Here we go. Hello. All right. Thanks for your patience. We just had a couple of little technical challenges the team have worked through. Thanks, guys. But we're running a little bit late, so apologies. We'll get underway. If you wouldn't mind coming and sitting in the cauldron, try and make this nice and intimate. We're going to have a really, really good session today. So my name's Stephen Hunt. I'm the co-founder and COO of Music Health. We are a young Aussie company that is trying to prove music is medicine, something we all know inherently, but there's actually a lot of work to be done before we could actually prove that as a fact. And we've started off by building an app called Vera, which helps carers of people with dementia find the right songs to stimulate their brains and improve care outcomes. Now, we're hosting you today at AIM, and the music you were just listening to as you were mingling and talking was actually the top chart songs on Vera. So you're the first people to hear a Vera chart, but we're going to start publishing those. But yeah, big thanks to AIM for hosting us today. So this is the Australian Institute of Music, and we are meeting on Gadigal country, part of the Eora Nation. So I want to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and say Budjiri Kamagua, which means welcome in their native tongue. So, yes, thank you. So we're here today to launch Shareasong. And if you're not familiar with Shareasong, it's a movement that we launched last year to try to rally the music industry behind the dementia cause. What many people don't realise is that music and dementia have an incredible relationship. And if you actually get the opportunity, which you will today, to see that actually in action, you'll be blown away. And certainly I was when my co-founder Nick, who you'll hear from shortly, showed me a video from a film called Alive Inside that completely changed my life. I actually turned around to him after I watched it with my wife and said, I've got to join in with you and help you, scale this, because if this can happen to someone with dementia just by playing music from their past, and it's not happening to the millions of people around the world that really need that, then there's a massive problem that someone needs to fix. And between me and you, I reckon we could make this happen. So we set out on that journey about 2 years ago, and Shareasong is really, it's a public awareness campaign. We don't brand it with the company, and it's not about us. It's really about trying to get people out there to understand that connection between music and dementia. And so last year when we launched it, we did a bit of a social activation, and we actually had Jimmy Barnes kind of helped us launch it with a really great press article, and we tried to encourage people to share songs on social media. And that went pretty well. It actually went right around the world. We had people in London, in the US, in Canada, even in New Zealand. So it was awesome. And we were really encouraged by that. But when we started thinking about how to evolve it this year and make it even better, we started to think about two particular areas where the message could be effective. And the first one of those is people who have someone in their family living with dementia. So we know that they come to visit them often, and that those visits can sometimes be challenging. And one way to really improve and enrich the connection that you can get out of those visits is to play music together and enjoy it. And so what we're really encouraging is that these Christmas holidays, or just holidays if you don't celebrate Christmas, it's a really great opportunity through December to come and see that loved one, which we're sure you're going to do, but try to enrich the experience by playing music together and reminiscing over songs from your past. So that's one call to action. But for many of us, we may not be affected by dementia, and we've been the lucky few if that's the case. But I'm sure there are people that you do love and that are in your family who you're going to spend time with over the holidays that may be getting to an age where it's a bit of a risk factor. And one of the really important things that we can do is identify the signs of dementia really early, because there's a lot of things we can do to actually slow down the progress of that if caught early enough. So what we really want to do on the other side of the fence is just get people to be spending time with their loved ones and being conscious about those signs, which we're going to make really public through the campaign. So this all kicks off in December, and today we just wanted to celebrate by doing an event where we're going to educate you a bit first. So Nick's going to talk about the science of music and how it impacts the brain and why all of these things happen. Then we've got some industry experts who are going to join me for a really interesting discussion, and we're going to go through and open up the subject, talk about it from different perspectives, and we want to hear from all of you. So if you get questions, there will be an opportunity for Q&A at the end of that panel. We're also going to hear from a special performance. I'm actually not going to preface it yet because it's a surprise. And then we're also going to have an interview. Rod Yates has joined us to interview Missy Higgins at the end and talk about her personal connection to dementia. She obviously has an incredible connection to music and how those two things have combined in her life. After all that's said and done, we're up to the roof for a couple of drinks, and we've got an incredible DJ who's done an amazing time in Ibiza, amongst other things. He's toured the world. He's lightning on the decks, so we're going to have a bit of a fun night until we get kicked out. But how does that sound? Everyone in? All right, awesome. Well, I'm going to kick off by handing over to Nick. Nick's the CEO of Music Health, my co-founder. Also a former Ibiza DJ. He actually grew up there. But Nick is a musicologist. He's been studying musicology for almost 2 decades and is a real authority on this space. So Nick, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Sorry, I do have notes, guys. This is why we have a clipboard. All right, rock and roll. Well, welcome everyone. Good evening. I'm super excited to do this talk because this is my favorite topic. So I get to nerd out and you get to listen. Don't leave. But the aim of this is really to provide you with some insights that I learned throughout my career and that changed my trajectory in life, really. And it was all about, I see we haven't used these yet. Yeah, that was your bit. So we'll start here then. And so the aim of this talk, it'll be about 10 minutes. It's not super long. The idea is just to share some of the things that I've learned in the last 20 years and to hopefully challenge the way you think about music in your life and how it can also benefit others. So before I do, I got to rewind a little bit and tell you how I got here. So I'll start with this. Does everyone here remember what this is? I know for a fact there's 2 people on our team that don't. But does everyone else do? Yeah. So my first Sony, I was a kid that was always listening to music. But when I got my first Sony, that was the first time that experience became personal. I was able to put the headphones on and I was able to listen to what I wanted to. And I mean, sad to say or not, that's never changed. I've always been the person with the headphones on, all through primary school. And there's evidence of this. This is my 1Q picture. So that is my first Sony there. I'm about, I think, 5. Also the coolest jacket ever. But story for another time. But all the way through high school, I always had my headphones on as well. And to this day, I listen to a lot of music every single day. I have my headphones on all the time. The only thing that's changed is that I now understand why I do it and why it benefits me. As a kid, I didn't know. I just did it because it made me feel good. So I love this movie for many reasons, but The Moves is all about this. So as Steve mentioned, I started my career as a DJ in Ibiza. When I was 14, I decided that's what I wanted to do with my life because I loved discovering new music, and I couldn't think of a greater purpose in life to find new music and be able to share that with others. And my biggest goal was, how do I find the best music and how do I sequence that in a way where I can provide joy? That really excited me. So when I was 14 and broke, I did all the odd jobs I could in the neighborhood, and I got summer jobs to save up money to buy my first set of turntables and vinyl. Anyone here that doesn't have vinyl, it's a very expensive hobby. I don't recommend it. But I loved it and I was obsessed. And by the time I was 16, I was offered my first job as a professional DJ, which is crazy because I wasn't allowed in any of the clubs. So I worked the bars, but for many seasons, particularly when I was young, I would work from 8 or 9 in the night to 6 in the morning. Bear in mind, I was 16 and I was also going to school. So you're all probably wondering what the hell my mom was thinking. But we had a very simple rule. She knew I was very passionate about this. I was very serious about this. I wasn't interested in drugs or alcohol at that time. I was interested in music. So in those days, the summer holiday in Ibiza was 5 months, which meant that at the start of the summer season, at the end, I was also in school. So the rule with my mom was simple. You show up, you pass your exams, you can be a DJ. And I did. And plenty of weird experiences. There's nothing weirder than playing in a club on a Monday night and seeing your teacher who's going to give you an exam 3 hours later. It happened a lot. But it was a great experience. I was very fortunate to be able to travel the world when I was very young. And I played, Beirut, Dubai, Shanghai, Sydney, Milan, played all over the world, and it was amazing. But the biggest takeaway for me was that everywhere I went, music impacted everyone the same. Race, religion, gender, didn't matter. Everyone experienced music in the same way. And I found that amazing. So amazing that I wanted to understand the science behind that. So thank you. I wrote this more as a joke, but whenever I'm in the US for work, you know what it's like there. They always say, what do you do? What's your name? How much do you make? And so this is kind of my phrase when I'm in the US. Hi, I'm Nick, and I'm a musicologist. Now, most people have no idea what that is. The last time I went through customs with Steve, the guy was like, oh, so you play a guitar. That's kind of the impression that people have. But I found this, which is actually the best way to explain what it is that a musicologist does. So musicologists are interested in how music is made, how people listen to music, and why music is heard in particular ways. Now, for me, my obsession was music taste. As a DJ, that's something you do. You're standing in front of an audience of strangers. You want to make them dance. You need to understand what works. So I wanted to understand music taste, to understand why you like what you like, and how that impacts your body and brain. So I'm going to share some of these learnings with you today. Very short, but to understand how music impacts us, we need to understand how our brain and how our hearing works. So very basic, what is sound? Sound is a vibration in the air. It's a sound wave. And when your hearing picks that up, you hear it, obviously. It can be through air. It can be through another medium, liquid, solid, as we know. There's a funny joke about this. It's a dad joke, which I'm sure you would know about. Can you hear it if a bear does something? Anyway, I'll think of it in a second. So how does that work? When the sound wave reaches your ear, it enters into your auditory canal. And that then changes into an electric signal or pulse. And that gets sent into roughly the middle of your brain. And from there, it gets sent to other areas of your brain, depending on what sound you're processing. And when I learned this, this was the coolest thing I learned very early on. Every sound you hear triggers an emotional response in your body. So the way I'm talking to you right now, maybe if I speak a little bit like this, it triggers an emotional response, good or bad, right? That I found very, very fascinating. And so the reason that happens is once the signal goes into your brain, it then gets sent through your central nervous system, which is throughout your whole body. And so that's why you feel the emotions, because the central nervous system is responsible for your emotion and your sensation. So it stands to reason then that if every single sound triggers an emotion in us, there's good and bad sounds, right? I see a few people nodding. A few people don't believe me yet. Well, here's an example. That would have been more daunting if it was louder, but thank you. That's enough. But that's obviously not a pleasant sound. We all know what that sound is. And instinctively, whether you've noticed or not, your brain, when it hears that sound, it puts you in fight or flight mode. When you hear a sound that is a negative sound for you, your body goes into alert mode. Do I need to fight this off, or am I safe? It happens with every single sound that we process. So let's see this one. I see half of you smiling. So for some people, this could probably be a bad sound, but for others, this could be a good sound. The point being, though, is that the way you respond to that, because of how your brain works, you're not alarmed by this sound. You recognize it and you know it's safe. And to put that into another context, when you're walking in the city, and maybe you notice this tonight when you walk away, you hear all different traffic sounds, you hear people talking, the trams, whatever's going on. Your brain is aware and associates those sounds as the cluster of you walking in the city, for example. But if you're standing in a field in the middle of nowhere, and there's no sound but, you know, a breeze and maybe some water running, and you hear a car horn, your body is going to go into fight or flight mode because your brain is not expecting that sound in that moment. Make sense? Cool. So here's another good sound.
I see trees of green, red roses too.
Sorry, tapped out early. Whether you like this song or not, I can tell you that the response that your brain had to this was positive. And it's positive for two reasons, but I'll jump ahead. The main reason is that unlike any other sound, music is a group of sounds essentially in a particular structure. That's what music means by definition. Music is the only sound that triggers all the different areas of your brain at the same time. So it's quite literally a brain workout. Whenever you're listening to music, it stimulates all the areas of your brain. No other sound does that, and no other natural stimulant that we know of does that. And that's very powerful. Which brings me to music and mental health. So why does this work for mental health? First, to understand what we mean by mental health at Music Health, we actually look at sort of two categories. One is what we would all know as mental health, and the other is more brain health, but we actually grouped them together because all of these conditions can be supported by music in different ways. So if we think about the chemical or hormonal imbalance, it's anxiety, depression, PTSD. If we think of developmental differences, disease or injury, it's autism, dementia, Parkinson's. So one is a rewiring of the brain or parts of the brain missing, and the other one is a chemical or hormonal imbalance. But all of them can benefit from music. So if we take Parkinson's as an example, Parkinson's is a disease where there's a disconnect between the brain and the body. The messaging service, so if we think about that central nervous system that I mentioned before, there's a disconnect between the messaging there. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all, sometimes it happens delayed, and this causes all kinds of things like tremors and something else. Scientists have found that, I don't know if this video is going to play, so I'll explain it first and then we'll see if it lights up. But researchers tested on how they could use music with Parkinson's, and they found that when you use structured music, so music with a pronounced rhythm like tango, you can actually help your brain and your body get back into sync with each other again. And so it's a great tool to get somebody to reduce their tremors, but at the same time, again, it's also stimulating all the areas of the brain, which means it's keeping the brain active. So neurons are firing, the brain is stimulated. There's nothing worse for the brain. Think of it like an exercise for your physical exercise. If you don't do exercise, you're not going to feel great. It's the same for the brain. So this is a really powerful stimulus. And so let's see if this plays. It'll take a moment. But what's interesting here is looking at the color changes when listening to the music for somebody with Parkinson's. You get the gist. It's a very long video. But the point being is when somebody listens to music, all those areas are stimulated. And for somebody with Parkinson's, that means they can actually reduce tremors. Parkinson's can often also lead to dementia, Parkinson's dementia. And again, this is a way to keep the brain stimulated to slow down that regression. So really powerful, non-invasive, and easy to use. We're actually also looking at how do we build out an application like that for today's world. And when you think about pronounced music, it's not just tango, it's also hip-hop has a very structured beat, dance music, DJ from Ibiza, dance music works as well. So there's many ways that you can apply that, but the point being is that could be treated as a brain exercise that somebody does daily. Really powerful. Now when we talk about dementia, whole different ballgame. So I'm oversimplifying this, but just to give you the general gist, dementia is the umbrella term for many different brain diseases. Alzheimer's is the most common. And Alzheimer's is a memory disease. So the memory shuts down, the brain regresses to a point where you're not able to do the most basic things yourself anymore, like getting dressed, eating, showering, etc. What's really interesting though in the research, and this is what this diagram is showing, it's not super clear, but if you see that little red dot at the top, that's where the music memory information goes into the brain before it spreads out to the other areas of the brain. And what you can see in the other images, it's not super clear, but where that music memory bit is, you'll see that the dementia doesn't actually attack that area. And when it does, it's only at the latest stages of the disease. So when we are able to find music that activates that music memory, which is music from your past, we can use that as a stimulus or a trigger to then activate the other areas of the brain that are not working properly by themselves anymore because of the disease. So it's really, really interesting. The other way I like to talk about that is if you have like jumper leads for a car, when your battery is flat, you need to start it up somehow, and then the battery recharges itself by running the motor. That's kind of what happens with the brain. It doesn't have the prompt anymore to provide the stimulus in the different areas, which means we can't do certain things. So it needs that trigger, and that trigger can be music. Music is one of the most powerful triggers for our memory. So to give you an example of this, and I'm hoping that the video works. And if it doesn't, I'll get Ada down here to sing it. There we go. So before we kick that off, this is a very old video, but this is the video that Steve was talking about earlier. This is a short 4-minute segment of this. But I think this is a perfect segue to the really awesome panel that's about to happen. Because when we talk about this often, unless you live with somebody that has dementia, it's really hard to understand what's actually going on. And I know there's some people here that are experiencing this, so they know what I mean. But for everyone else, it's a very daunting experience that when you walk into a room and see somebody you've known your whole life not recognize you, it's very confusing for yourself. So what I want to show here, this is actually a friend of ours that started this program many years ago, and this is basically what we're doing, but the 2.0 version of it. I'll shut up now and let the video do the talking. Oh, good. That was my cue.
Hi, Papa. Hi, Papa.
Huh?
How you doing?
I'm all right. Fine. Wait.
Who am I?
I don't. Wait a minute. I don't.
Okay, it's Cherry. How long has he been in the nursing home? Approximately 10 years.
Can everyone hear that, by the way?
He was having
Yeah.
seizures, and my mother couldn't handle him at home. Of course, it affected me greatly because he was always, fun-loving, singing, every occasion he would come out with a song, no matter where he was. I remember as a child, he used to walk us down the street, me and my brother, and he would stop and do Singing in the Rain. He would have us jumping and swinging around poles. He was, he was good. He was always into music, always loved singing, dancing.
His name is Henry Dreyer,
Uh-huh.
and I'm looking more or less for religious music for him
Okay.
because he enjoys music and he always quoting the Bible. So I'd rather have that for him.
We first see Henry inert, maybe depressed, unresponsive, and almost unalive.
Henry,
Yeah.
Henry,
Yes, sir.
I found your music. You want your music now?
What's up to you? Okay.
Let's try your music, okay? And then you tell me if it's too loud or not.
Then he is given an iPod containing, we know, his favorite music. And immediately he lights up. His face assumes expression, his eyes open wide. He starts to sing, to rock, and to move his arms, and he's being animated by the music.
And he used to always sit on the unit with his head like this. He didn't really talk to much people. And then when I introduced the music to him, this is his reaction ever since.
The philosopher Kant once called music the quickening art, and Henry is being quickened, he's being brought to life.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the music for 1 second, okay? Just to ask you a few questions. Okay? I'm going to give it back to you.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
The effect of this doesn't stop, which when the headphones are taken off, Henry, normally mute and virtually unable to answer the simplest yes or no questions, is quite voluble.
Henry,
Yeah.
do you like the iPod? Do you like the music you're hearing?
Yes.
Tell me about your music.
Well, I don't have none. I mean,
Do you like music?
yeah, I'm crazy about music. You play beautiful music, beautiful sound,
Did you-
beautiful.
Did you play music when you were did you like music when you were young?
Yes, I went to big dances and things.
What was your favorite music when you were young?
Well, I guess, Cab Calloway was my number one band guy. I liked. That did the holy, the holly, the hilly, the holy, the milly, the holly, the ah.
What's your favorite Cab Calloway song?
Oh, I'll be home there for Christmas. Oh, you can count and plan on me with plenty of snow, mistletoe, present wrapped around your tree. Ow!
So in some sense, Henry is restored to himself. He has remembered who he is, and he's reacquired his identity for a while through the power of music.
What does music do to you?
Give me the feeling of love, romance. Figure right now the world need to come into music, singing. You got beautiful music in, beautiful, oh lovely. And I feel the band of love, the dream. The Lord came to me, made me holy. I'm a holy man. So he gave me this sound. So they say, I meet you. Let me see, Rosalie.
Yeah, it's an awesome video. Sorry the sound wasn't great, but a couple of observations here. This gentleman was inert, wasn't communicating properly, was feeling, as the lady mentioned, down and just not wanting to interact with anyone. After listening to his favorite song by Cab Calloway, which, by the way, amazing artist if you don't know the music, best swing out there. And he changed. He's able to communicate, still not, full conversation, but he's able to answer, respond, communicate. His memory is obviously working. He can sing along. He's singing a cappella there for a moment as well. And all of that just because of the music. And again, this is what you're going to hear on the panel now in a second. When you're working with somebody like this, or many people with dementia on a day-to-day basis, these little moments are life-changing. And that's really the mission here. So I'm going to stop talking because I could talk about this all night. I'll hand it back over to Steve. But I hope that gives you a little glimpse into the power of music for mental health. We will be writing a lot of this on our blogs about all the different areas of mental health. But today, this is about dementia. This is about sharing a song. And I'll just leave this as a challenge for everyone here. My Share a Song moment is Aretha Franklin Think, because that's the song I grew up in. That's what I danced to in the living room with my mother. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Nick. So as I said, we've got a special musical treat for you tonight. So I would love to welcome to the stage, I think you need to get microphones, but we've got Minnie and Sissy, who are Finnish sisters. Now, Sissy was actually on The Voice in Finland, and Minnie is an AIM grad, so she spent the last 6 years here in Australia. And as you can imagine, two sisters that are really musical, from a musical family that apparently love karaoke, much like mine. They've sung a lot together, but they've never performed together in Australia. So tonight, they are going to share a song with their mum, Susan, who's in the crowd, who I believe didn't know about this, but yeah, come down and take the stage, girls.
One, two, three. So, Mom, you didn't know this. Where are you? Oh, right there. So we grew up in a household with a lot of ABBA and Elvis. And our mom is like Agneta from ABBA. So we had no choice but to do a little ABBA song for our mother. This goes out to you. I never felt this strong. I'm invincible, how could this go wrong? No, here's where we belong. I see a road ahead. I never thought I would dare to tread. Like an image passing by, my love, my life in the mirror of your eyes. My love, my life, I can see it all so clearly. Oh, I love you dearly. Images passing by, like reflections of your mind. My love, my life, are the words I try to find. My love, my life, but I know I don't possess you. With all my heart, God bless you. You will be my lover, my life. You're my one and only. held you close to me, felt your heartbeat, and I thought I am free. Oh yes, and as one are we, in the now and beyond. Nothing and no one can break our bond. Like an image passing by, my love, my life, in the mirror of your eyes. My love, my life, I can see it all so clearly, all I love so dearly. Images passing by, like reflections of your mind. My love, my life, are the words I try to find. My love, my life, but I know I don't possess you. With all my heart, God bless you. You will be my love and my life. Yes, I know I don't possess you. With all my heart, God bless you. You will be my love and my life. You're my one and only. Love you, Mom.
All right. Thank you so much, girls. That was
Thank you.
amazing.
And thank you, Steve. And
Yeah.
Music Health. Take the stage.
What do you think, Susan? But that's what Shareasong is all about. So having beautiful moments like this with your family, I'm sure that your family would love to hear all of you sing like that to them. So come on. This Christmas, we've got to get it out there, get everyone singing and dancing. But yeah, thank you so much. That was really special. All right, we're going to move on to a bit of a panel discussion now. So I might welcome to the stage Matt, Renee and Emily. And as they're doing that, we're just going to play a video here for you, which is, we actually filmed at Barossa Village where Matt works, just to give you a bit of an idea of how music and practice works. And so let's hit play and then we'll get into a bit of a chat. Yeah. Here we go.
It's great to be able to walk down the passageway and I can hear the piano going. It brings back lots of memories from my childhood. When Dad passed away 7 years ago, I was a bit worried about Mum, how she would be coping. I think Mum would be in a different place from where she is now if it hadn't been for music. It's good for Mum mentally to be playing the piano. Keeps any dementia at bay, and she's always in a good place when she's playing the piano.
Music seems to be one of those things that just stays with us. When we hear music, it activates a different part of the brain to hearing other stimulation. Unregulated emotion essentially is what we're doing when we're looking after someone with dementia, and music is one of those things that helps focus some of those emotions.
I said shake, rattle and roll. I said shake, rattle and roll. Well, you never done nothing to save your doggone soul.
My research was looking at effective treatments for people living with dementia in residential care, what works and what doesn't work. We were doing that as a very manual process where we were going through and going, right, what was going to be on the radio, what was on the top 10.
It's almost like a history of our life, because there was a time when we were interested in rock groups like Deep Purple and Janis Joplin, and chronologically we can see, oh yes, that was that was that part of our life.
We learnt that little magic trick that the music that you got into between the ages of 15 and 25, that's going to be the music that resonates with you for the rest of your life.
To be able to remember the music that I was brought up with brings back memories.
The ukulele is fun. It's got funny sayings in the songs, hasn't it?
Oh, and his breath was really rain. I'll never go near him again. I'll make a big wide pass, and if he frightens me, I'll swear I'll boot him up the chimney. That's a bit of a silly song, isn't it?
I grew up with music surrounding me all the time, and my preference these days is classical music.
Morning, Greta.
Vera being that targeted playlist which is focused on how a resident relates to music is an amazing innovation.
I really enjoy the way Vera's tailored to our residents here. You walk into a room, it's already loaded as to what that person's tastes are, their demographic, the style, from their era. You just press play, happy faces. Yeah, it's really, really good.
The family members, they love it because they can participate with the resident as well. They can come in and they can sit down with mum and dad or grandma and grandpa, and they can actually listen to music with them as well. And then they get that reminiscence that comes along with it.
We've got one resident, for instance, she loves Elvis. She's crazy for Elvis. To get Elvis onto the little speaker, it turns her whole day around. We jive and we sing, and it just makes a massive difference. She goes from, you know, not wanting to get up and get ready for the day, wanting to stay in bed, to being ready, happy for the rest of the day. Every time I go past her, she's smiling and happy, and it just makes a huge, huge difference.
I love hearing the stories of families that connect with their loved one, and then they get those life stories, those critical life stories right at the end, so that they know where they came from. And music is a great way of unlocking that. If you're 18 or if you're 80, there's something to take from music.
Another restless night, another caused by you.
Can you guys flick it over to the other slide for me? Cool. Well, thanks for that. And thanks, Matt, for being such an amazing partner. And welcome to the stage, guys. So we've got three amazing people here to join us on the panel. So we've got Emily Casey, Renee Smith, and Matt Cowald. And as a little bit of an icebreaker, I'm going to give them a Song Saga card. If you haven't heard of Song Saga, this is another startup in AIM's innovation lab, the AIM iHub. So the AIM iHub was set up to try to find startups that were doing interesting things with music, give them a home, give them support, and it's really been received really well by the music industry. We've actually, a lot of what we've done tonight has been helped by Universal Music Group as well, who are a big supporter. So it's so we wanted to have a crack at this, and Eran, who runs Song Saga, is around if you want to have a crack with him later. There he is. And he's brought a few along. So, all right, so I'm going to pick one at random, Emily. All right, so the way this works is you pick up a card, it's got a prompt, and you've got to answer it with what's the song and what's the story. So, Emily, let's go. Teen angst.
Oh, I think it's something all of us will have, like quite vivid songs in our mind or that pop to mind. But for me, I would say it's a band, and it's Blink-182. It very much represents my early teen years. Probably a trade-off between Miss You and the party song. And the memory is like, we had this school camp at the beginning of year 7, and it was surf camp, and it was kind of our first time, like away from our parents and as like almost adults in high school, and you know, we stayed up late and snuck around, and it was kind of the beginning of the teen angst period, and it was so much fun, such a good time of life.
Awesome. What a great memory attached to a song. All right, Renee, I'm going to go I'm going to go dad, family.
Yeah, Dad. So Dad's always been surrounded by music. Not the best singer in the world, but he gets on there. But for me, music, and particularly more recently, he has early onset dementia. But with music, Beach Boys. We were, Round Around, Get Around, and all that song. So that was always playing our summer hits. So living in a country town, it was one of our favourites. So definitely Beach Boys.
Awesome. I love the Beach Boys, and they're actually very, very popular on Vera. Matt, I'm going to go for They Were Great Live.
Look, there's quite a few. I was probably the greatest thing for me came from Teenage Angst as well, was finally seeing Morrissey live on stage. And it's almost like a weird, I don't know, Morrissey's just like he's a meme of himself, but I just remember standing there just going, it's as good as I hoped for. And my wife was heavily pregnant at the time, and she was standing next to me going, this is the worst thing of my life.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get into it. So, Emily, I might start with you. You were a med student, but you now lead an incredible community called What the Health. You're kind of at the forefront of the healthcare innovation system. So how did you make that massive jump, and what's your mission with What the Health?
Oh, the forefront is very kind of you to say. But yeah, I guess I got into healthcare like all starry-eyed. It was kind of what you did if you were relatively smart in high school and you liked science and didn't want to become a lawyer. And, I always wanted to help people. My mom was a nurse. It was always a big passion area for me. And then when I got into medicine, unfortunately, the reality of clinical life and hospital systems didn't really line up. Like, don't get me wrong, amazing, you're helping people, but I found that you were always really, really constrained by the systems, and it was more Band-Aid fixes as opposed to like sort of working with people to help them live, longer, healthier lives. So addressing the prevention issue and stuff. And you'd see patients and then you'd send them home knowing that they'll be back the next week, but that's just how the system works. And to me, that seemed so messed up, and I just couldn't get around that. So I was more interested in those systemic side. And I also had a bunch of health challenges myself. Had like 5 or 6 surgeries during med school. So learnt, firsthand how wonderful the health system is. Not shitting on the Australian health system though, sorry for swearing. We do have a great system comparatively. But, I found if it was that hard for me, how on earth was anyone else supposed to navigate it? So I honestly became quite jaded and took a step back. Naturally went to the opposite of healthcare and jumped into corporate finance. But through that, learned about tech and finance and the power of those instruments for change. So worked in startups for a while, and then when COVID hit, it was finally like the whole world actually took healthcare and health technology seriously. It was like finally, these systems that have been working on, a shoestring and such old systems realized that they had to make a change, and they were looking for the tools to do so. But we're still operating on paper-written notes and fax machines. So anyway, the long and the short of it is a lot of people started asking questions and asking me questions given the background I had. And I thought I had no experience in the scheme of things, but turns out that a little bit can go a long way. And after a lot of conversations, what I realized was there was huge disconnection in the space, and there was really a need for, I guess, a bit more of that connection, both from, resources and content and learning, as well as just between people. So I started writing a terrible little newsletter, thought maybe 5 people would read it, to try and create like a bit of that connection and cut through some of the BS in a bit more of a fun way. And now it's an awesome community of about 3,500 people, a heap of startups, people from all different areas of the health system, finance, healthcare, and our goal is to kind of make healthcare and health tech just a little bit more accessible, fun, and connected, and connect a few of those dots in people and help bring about that collaboration to promote some change.
Well, you're doing an awesome job. So I'm a subscriber and I love it. So if you're interested, check out What the Health. But we're going to hear much more from Emily in a sec. And Matt, as I was doing a bit of digging, so obviously you were in the clip before. You work at Barossa Village, looking after the whole operation there. But I discovered you also have your own radio show. So I'd love to hear a bit about how you got into that and what made you get into aged care as a profession.
Look, I'll always plug my radio show, which is on Triple B FM in the Barossa Valley. You can tune into it via the internet, so you don't actually have to live in the Barossa to listen to it. Community radio, well, it was the teenage dream growing up with radio in the Adelaide Hills, so there was no radio. And then all of a sudden, Triple J came to town, and that was in 1987. So that's, I'm old enough to be nearly everyone's parent. It was just like, oh, this is so different. And then I discovered through a friend of mine another radio station, which was an independent radio station, and I had a little shortwave radio with a coat hanger stuck into it so I could actually pick it up sticking out my window, and I just loved it instantly. I've always just loved radio. So the opportunity to be part of it was just like, well, why wouldn't I want to do it? So when we moved to the Barossa, or moved back to the Barossa, it was like, this is my lifelong dream, to sing with the leader tafel, which I'll never do because they're evil men, and do community radio. And I've been doing community radio for 3 years, and it's just the best fun. And I've had Nick on the show. We did a show, and my show basically picks a year. We play the music from that year, and we don't always play the hits. We play all sorts of music from that year, and we talk about the political climate at the same time. So it sounds really fascinating. I know you're all going to be tuning in tomorrow night between 8 and 10. But I got into aged care, well, by accident. It was one of those things that I failed first year of nursing because I drank too much. And then my mother made me go and do my Cert 3 in community health. And I wound up working at Barossa Village after doing my Cert 3. And through my registered nursing, I did care work. And I loved it. In fact, I didn't think I could ask for a job. It was a bit surreal. The director of nursing actually came up to me after my placement and said, are you going to ask us for a job? And I said, I didn't think I was allowed to because I'm having too much fun. And I've always just enjoyed that connecting with people. And I guess that's my radio show. It's like I've got that opportunity to do what I did there. But also I came back to aged care because I saw how broken the acute care system was. And I needed to make sure that that was actually being supported at the other end. So people from my nursing home don't go to hospital. They stay in my nursing home, and we give them blood transfusions and do all the things that they need to have because they don't need to be outside of that environment.
Yeah, well, you're doing amazing work, and as I said, pleasure to partner with you. And Renee, you're one of Australia's most experienced diversional therapists. Yeah. So maybe for those in the audience who don't know, could you share a bit about what diversional therapy is all about and what attracted you to your career?
Well, again, that title is very nice of you to say that. So diversional therapist, usually I get a very odd look when people ask me again what I do. And so diversional therapists, we look at the use of leisure and recreation for people. So it's a human right, and we work on devising individualised programs for people based on what their ability is and enabling people to continue to enjoy the leisure or to explore new opportunities for leisure. So yeah, I think our job's pretty cool, and so leisure and recreation is where we fit. So
awesome. And again, amazing work that they do over there. So let's dive into it. I'll start at a bit of a high level, but maybe Emily, you can answer this first one. But you've got a pretty unique perspective studying all the emerging trends in healthcare. So what are you seeing with regard to music intersecting with healthcare? And maybe could you tell us a bit about a couple of startups that you see in the space that are doing interesting things?
For sure. Well, my favorite startup is here tonight, Music Health, in case you haven't heard of them. But music and healthcare is at such an interesting intersection. Like, I think there's this thing where everyone's always known the power of music, right, for society, for well-being, and it's gotten really picked up, particularly in around mental health, right? And mental health and music have been trending for a while, but slowly we're starting to see other areas branch out. And it's not just from music, to be fair. I think medicine as a whole has largely rejected a lot of things that are preventative and perhaps not a pill or cutting someone open. We've always opted for more of those like sort of quick fix treatments that also actually have a large, I guess, market and economy behind them, and often disregarded alternative treatments, which is just crazy, but it's nice to see that trend slowly coming in. But there's some awesome things happening. In particular, there's some really fun things around, I guess, using music and syncing that with people's, I guess, stress levels and cardiology style things. So there's an awesome company called Wavy, and they essentially are using or measuring people's heart rate along with like their responses to music to try and, I guess, treat really specific types of cardiac issues. And they're starting with one particular one, but looking to branch out. And as we all know, like stress is a huge problem for people. Stress affects every medical condition out there and health, and is a huge indicator for things. And if you can really, sort of quantify and link a few more of those patterns, and I guess help change that through whether it's small bites of music or larger ones, that will have a huge impact for everyone of all age and different areas.
Yeah, it's an interesting one when you're talking about stress, because one of the things that's been coming up in our work a bit is this notion that you're actually just fighting growing old the whole time, and that could be thought of as a disease. And then all these things that medically we call a disease, like dementia or heart disease, they're actually just consequences of aging. But there's, I won't go down this rabbit hole now, but there's a really interesting theory that maybe we can treat aging itself and then hold off a lot of these complications. And stress being one of the main things that ages you. So definitely, we all need to chill. So, Renee and Matt, you've both worked in aged care for a really long time. How are you seeing things evolving there? And are you finding that dementia is becoming more prevalent, or what's new? What's happening in your space?
Look, I think we've been learning on this journey, which is our aged care industry, and that's certainly shaped by the experiences. With regards to the prevalence of dementia, I think we have to take a step back and know that we're living longer. So we are seeing people living far well into their 90s, and the centenaries are out there as well. And once upon a time, we weren't getting to that age. So. And because we are becoming acutely more aware and understanding the journey of people's experience and diagnosis of dementia, we probably are seeing more, but there's obviously the other end of the spectrum where we are seeing an ageing population where people stay at home longer. Would you agree?
Yeah, people are coming into residential aged care much older and much frailer. So when I started in aged care, there was a car park for the residents, and they'd drive in and they'd go out and they'd do things during the day. Now that's a long way away. We are lucky to get people for the last 3 or 4 months of their life sometimes, and they've had a fairly horrendous time at home as well, because we're conditioning people that they need to stay at home longer and longer and longer, and the government's pushing people in that direction, and I won't get on the government bandwagon, but being socially isolated in your home because you physically can't get out, it's a form of restraint, which we're not addressing as an industry. So we need to really be conscious that aged care facilities, if you access them early enough with some cognition, you actually have a better outcome. But that's not what the government wants, because it's a heap more expensive to keep people in residential aged care.
And you talk about stress, living at home by yourself. Social isolation has such a huge impact on cognition. And a lot of the time we see that the more engaged people are socially and connected with their communities, the less likely they are to have a cognitive decline. So there is this catch-22 that we're also seeing as a result of it.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because that's one of the things when we talk about in Shareasong, trying to notice the signs of dementia and identifying it earlier. There are things you can do, like being more social, that can help delay the onset and sort of give you a much better progression. So, yeah, that's really fascinating. Matt, you've been involved in some research at Barossa related to music. What was the impact that you saw specifically?
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to work with the Global Centre of Modern Ageing when we were sort of beta testing the Miro music, which was the first incarnation of Vera, and it was fascinating because we got to apply the intervention, so to speak, on a number of residents, and Roy was probably the one that we all remember the most because he was a man who was deep inside himself, so very severe dementia, and basically would sit head down, no reaction and starting to go into contractures. His family would come in and play the music with him, and he started out just tapping his toes. He was a band member, so in the Barossa we've got town bands. It's just a thing that we do, and every town has one. And he was in the Marananga town band, and if you don't know where Marananga is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't add to the story. They wear a green uniform. He was in that band his whole life, so every time that band music went on, he started tapping his foot. And the more and more we used the intervention, the more he started doing things. And then he did start to vocalise, but his vocalising wasn't actually coherent. He was making noises towards his daughter, which, you know, it looked like he was trying to say something. But I think if we tried the intervention years earlier, we might have actually kept some of that, you know, Henry style. In the end, it would be you take the headphones off, and for a couple of hours afterwards, you'd still get that response from Roy, that he would be easier to work with. And he was a big unit. He was like 120 kilos, and you didn't want to mess with him. And especially when you're trying to move someone around that's got contractures at 120 kilos, it's complicated. But there was a relaxing whenever music was applied. So we kept using music with Roy right up until his death. But we had quite a few stories like that, not quite as pronounced as Roy. We actually had quite a few Roys that had positive results. Maybe it's the name, but so maybe it should be Roy music. I don't know. But if music was a strong part of their background, we certainly got a better result.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've been seeing lots of things in our journey as well. And Renee, Hammond Care's, got a reputation for being like a leader in Australia with dementia care. So what are some of the initiatives that you've undertaken there that are trying to integrate music into the offering that you develop for your customers?
Yeah, sure. So music has been a huge part of the integration of our philosophy of care, our model of care. But I guess the biggest part is that with either music or any engagement, this is about the individual person. So it's not really about the overall technology that we're using. It's about how we, respect and understand the individual. So the biggest part is that we integrate within our assessment process. We understand a music preference playlist, which then generates how do we use music, and that might be through connecting with a registered music therapist or linking in with our, wonderful volunteers who might play musical instruments themselves or come together in groups, and also linking in with Envira, which we've been recently involving in one of our homes. So our biggest drive is music is about the opportunity for the individual, and it's driven through the process and really respecting that individual's needs.
Yeah, awesome. And Em, we talked at the start a bit about music as medicine and how that's kind of not been proven. But, as someone who's come through the clinical system, like what does it take to prove music as medicine, even if we can all see it?
Yeah, look, when I say not proven, I think that there's a heap of studies out there, right? And there is an entire industry around it. Like music therapy has been around forever, and anyone who's engaged with it knows the true power of it. But I think there's this really interesting, issue about accessibility is probably the key one. So it's like, understanding is the first. I guess there needs to be an education basis from both sides, from the professionals and the patients. If people don't know about it, if people kind of think it's woo-woo or like don't have hard evidence and have it presented to them in the right way, it's automatically going to be rejected. And unfortunately in medicine, you do need that first basis. And then I guess the accessibility component comes down to resources at the end of the day and products. We have a finite amount of humans. There's a very limited amount of music therapists. And unfortunately, initiatives like this often haven't got the funding, right? So a lot of allied health really has been neglected, which means people don't engage with it, which then also means we don't get the outcomes to validate that and direct more funding towards it. So I know a lot of the bodies have sort of lobbied the government a whole heap to try and get it on the MBS and have it involved in different programs, but the funding is often just not there and short-lived. But then the other interesting component, right, is technology and creating like other ways of accessing these things and experiences. So I think that presents a really awesome opportunity. If you can remove the cost of music therapists and or scalability issue, we can all access it more. But then lastly, I suppose there is regulation. Healthcare is very serious. You've got people's lives in your hands. And also, tech has progressed way more than regulation has. So regulation is playing catch up. And so we kind of need to, figure out what structures we want to use to then regulate a lot of these digital products, not just music, but other things in the preventative health space like hypnosis and diet interventions and things, and figure out how we sort of want to approach it there to sort of get more of these initiatives in the community and funded.
Yeah, it's a long road ahead, but an exciting one. I guess Matt and Renee, like we've just lived through a really tough couple of years being the pandemic, and I'm sure everybody here saw plenty in the news about how that affected the aged care system. But I can't imagine what it would have been like for you guys. But how did you and the team manage to pull through? If you don't mind sharing, I know it was probably not pleasant.
Oh, look, it is what it is. Outbreaks of infections aren't new in aged care. Nearly every Christmas time you'll have a norovirus outbreak, and if you don't know what norovirus is, it's gastro on steroids. It is a fun time for everyone involved, and I'm always the last person standing, so I've never got it. You're
going to jinx yourself. Please be careful.
I've been saying this for 10 years, but I'm always the last person standing. So I end up doing the night duty when no one else is available. What does that mean about... so we're used to being locked down. We're used to all these sorts of things happening, but obviously not the scale and not having the people come into our facility like we used to. We lost school kids, which really sucked more than anything else. We'd have 3 different lots of school kids come through and do different things with our residents, and one of those things was music. Like they'd come in and they'd have performances, which everyone loved because it was their grandchildren or great-grandchildren or the third cousin of the second cousin. That's how the country works. But that was a massive loss to us. And then it was trying to keep people's spirits up. So we were really lucky when GCMA came and knocked on our door with Vera, because this was one of those things that we could actually give back to people. And I think the thing that I wanted to actually highlight that we didn't talk about, because that video was shot during a blackout in the middle of a COVID outbreak. And Tim, who did the videography, did an amazing job, because you wouldn't have known it was a blackout unless you were there. It was a 35-degree day as well, and it was stinking hot, and I couldn't get the shine off my head. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But where I'm going with this is the intervention of Miri Music at the time, or Vera, was about the carers actually having something to do with the residents to connect with them. So the technology's fantastic. Love the technology. It's a great catalyst. But when the technology failed, what the carers were doing was they were opening up their own Spotifys on the phones that they weren't supposed to be carrying on them. And then they were playing music that they enjoyed with the residents. And then the residents were going, oh, that's really interesting. I quite like that. Or they were going, that's terrible. And then they end up talking about how terrible the music is all day long. And you know what? That's an activity in itself. Because if you can unite in hate, well, that's a fantastic thing. So it was complicated, but it was these little things that we could give people to actually make life a little bit better, and it wasn't government handouts.
Did it highlight how important the families are in connection?
Yeah.
Because obviously they couldn't come in until...
No, we had the stupid visiting window, which was... there was a fight out the front one day because 3 families wanted to visit, and we only had one window that faced out the front. So there was almost... Yeah, that was not good. We had to call the police. But it was... But that's how much people felt disenfranchised. So now, we had a COVID outbreak last week. There was 38 residents affected. No one got particularly sick. Families kept coming in. Life went on. Everyone's had 4 injections. Antivirals are everywhere. It's a different world we live in now.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness we're kind of largely past it, but I suppose it's going to just stick around as something we need to manage, right?
It's just going to be there forever.
I might throw out like a bit of a more funny one. So if you wonder, what your twilight years are going to be, and this is probably a good one for all of you in the crowd, what would you want aged care to be like for you when it's your turn? Because we've been thinking about it a lot. We're in a startup. We need to think 10 years ahead of where we are and plan for that and build for that. So I'll just throw this one out. But looking into the crystal ball, what do you reckon aged care in 2050 looks like?
Oh, I'll tell you what, it's going to be a rocking place. I think I think we have come so far in terms of recognising the individual. We still have a long way to go. It's not perfect, but I think by the time we get to 2050, every single person will have a voice. I think there's going to be a lot of competition on playlists, in the communal spaces. So those police officers might be, in track. But I think, it's a really exciting time to be. It will be. I hope, by the time then it's a good place for my parents and any other loved ones that will be there, or maybe it might be me, so who knows. But I think, I think it's going to be an exciting opportunity. We're getting there.
What do you reckon, Matt? We going for nightclubs and mosh pits?
Well, look, it already is a bit like a rave. Everyone's on drugs and they don't know where they are and they can't see anything. So I hope it's actually better than that. That we've actually got people that can connect in a meaningful way, and I think we can get around the music playlist because all the headphones have got Bluetooth now, so you can stream straight to the hearing aids, which is really a good
silent discos.
Silent discos. That's what it'll be. But hopefully, we've sorted out the medication thing. The prevalence of dementia has dropped dramatically. Like there's breakthroughs every day. I live in hope that I won't have to live through dementia, and I guess that's why they're putting legislation in place for people that want to get prepared. But anyway, that's a whole... No, we're not going there.
Well, what if we bring that lens a little bit shorter? What's exciting you both about the next decade for people living in aged care?
I think the next decade, as I said, we're really moved forward in terms of people driving their care and having a voice now. I think it's become very prevalent and recognised that we can't continue the way that we've been. And I think that we will be giving back the power to people to make decisions, to drive their care, to decide on what they want to eat or if they want to sleep in. And it doesn't have to go by a time frame of day. And I think the biggest thing is that we're recognising the non-pharmacological interventions are the most integral part of care in residential care, and that there is, the world's your oyster because we've got, almost 100 individuals in there, and imagine what we could be doing in terms of engagement. I think it's exciting.
Sounding good. I might move in earlier. All right, well, I think we might try to wrap it up, but before we go, we'll start with you, Emily. I want to know, how are you planning to celebrate Shareasong in December?
Oh, what a fun question. So the video before actually really hit close to home for me. I grew up largely in the country, in rural, southern New South Wales, and a lot of my family are still out there, and it was a big rural-y bunch of cousins, and we'd all go to the farm for Christmas, and it was just chaos. But my grandmother would always sit down and play the piano, and she taught us all how to play the piano. And it's like one of those things that you kind of hate, but you kind of love when you're young, and now it just reminds me of home. And I think I can't wait to get back there and have everyone go home and sit around the piano. And she's also, slowly deteriorating, but can always jump on the piano and do her thing, and the way her hands move, magic. So I'm looking forward to that.
Amazing. How about you, Renee?
Well, we always had this record that was these really, really bad Christmas carols. And Dad, we've sort of put that off for the last couple of years. We've been like, oh no, we'll use a CD. But I think, music, as I said, has been really important for Dad over the last couple of years with his dementia. And I think I'll let him have his Christmas carols. And I'll be, they're cringeworthy, but they are very lovely. And the skipping, record vinyl, that's going to be nostalgic. So we'll be doing that.
Got one of those really ugly Christmas sweaters too. That'll just...
No, it's too hot in the country for that.
What type of cringe are we talking? I really want to know now.
I don't even know how to describe it. It's like really old school, cringy, it's a record.
All right, what about you, Matt? Bring us home.
Well, we've had a tradition for the last 7 years up until COVID, and then we couldn't do it anymore. We used to do Christmas carols in the corridor. So I would drag my family up to the nursing home, and we would sing with the rest of the staff on the Monday before Christmas, carols through the corridor. So we'd go around every corridor, so there's 8 corridors in the nursing home, and we'd sing 3 carols at the end of every corridor. And by the time you've sung, 3 times 8 plus requests, you were you were pretty much buggered for the night, but it would be great to actually get back and do that again. And our Christmas vinyl that comes out every year is James Brown Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Has everyone got James Brown Christmas? Yes. Santa Claus goes straight to the ghetto. I love it. Best Christmas song ever written.
Awesome. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, please give these amazing people a round of applause. Thank you so much. And as we move on to the final part, we're going to play a song. So Rod is going to come down and interview Missy Higgins, who's dialing in from Victoria. But she wrote a beautiful song called Cooling in the Embers about her grandmother and her experience with dementia. So if we can roll that, and Rod, come on down, we'll get you set up.
I'm done with. You put your hand on top of mine. You're talking fast, but talking blind. And I can't bring myself to meet your eyes. 'Cause death is slowly covering you in galaxies of black and blue. When under your skin all his colors blue. You're only half here, like someone left a frail body and took the rest. But I remember when you were strong and never wanted help from no one. What you become is not who I remember. Is this the cooling of the
Patience, guys. We're just getting everything set up here. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Rod, who is going to interview Missy for you. Rod's an amazing journalist, if you don't know his work. So we're really, really delighted to have him here. And over to you, Rod.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. Hello, nice to see you. We're just waiting for Missy to come online. Here she is. Hey,
I'm
Missy.
here.
How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Nice to see you guys.
Can you see me? I'm not sure where. Can you see me if I stand here?
I can. I can see a little you looking off to the side. So
Awesome.
it's all very, very appropriate for Zoom.
Great. And if I could turn the camera around, you'd see an auditorium full of people who are very happy to have you here tonight. So thanks for joining us.
Okay. Yeah. No worries.
Yeah. Maybe a round of applause so she can hear.
Thanks, everyone.
Before we chatted, or before this chat, we were listening to Cooling of the Embers, that beautiful song from the old Razzle Dazzle album. And I was wondering if we could start by you just explaining to us what the circumstances were around the writing of that song and what caused you to write that song.
Yeah. Well, I wrote that song about my late grandma, Judy. She always liked us to call her Judy because it made her not feel old. And she was about 86 when she had a stroke and a bit of bleeding in the brain, and it caused dementia, and then gradually a couple more bleeds, and it got worse, and it started to kind of turn into Alzheimer's. So it was a real it was just a real shock, I guess, knowing someone who was so vibrant and such a strong personality, such a incredible character of a woman. Like, she was just the boss wherever she went. Like, she used to wear leather leggings and high heels around town with like matching pearls, and it was just, she was incredible. And but then she kind of started to become a bit of a shadow of herself, I guess. And as her granddaughter, who I used to stay with her all the time as a kid, we were really close. It was really hard watching her her mind kind of deteriorate like that. And the song Cooling of the Embers it's about watching her kind of transition from the woman I used to know to someone who felt like she had one foot in our world and one foot in the next world. Like she just started, which I know is very, very common for people with dementia. She started reminiscing a lot about the old days because that's where her memories were the strongest. So she talked about George, who was my grandfather. We called him Papa. And it was just all about George. And, you know, just the memories were just so clear when she spoke about him and when she spoke about the past. So I remember thinking that it really felt like she was half here and half there with him. And I also remember seeing her skin. It was so translucent that it felt like I was looking at somebody who had galaxies inside them, you know. So it was kind of, it was a beautiful but very sad time for all of us.
Yeah, and I mean, the lyrics are so evocative. You know, there's that one line, "You're only half there, like someone left a frail body and took the rest." What was it like writing those words down for you?
Well, it was really hard. Like it was a bit of an exorcism, I think, of feelings. As a lot of my songs are when I'm trying to process what I'm going through. I think it was my first real experience with a close, well, one of the first experiences with a close person dying. Definitely somebody suffering from dementia that I had ever known. So yeah, it was really a new thing for all of us to process. And she had become so frail in her last days. So that was kind of, like I said before, that was hard to watch for someone who'd been so strong and so vibrant for as long as I'd known her.
One of the things that we've been talking about today is how music can help people who are suffering ill health. But the actual act of writing this music, how do you think that helped you deal with what your grandmother was going through and how it was affecting you and your family?
Yeah, I think it helped. It helped immensely, and I know that it was a good catalyst for some people in my family being able to have a good cry. You know, I think that's the thing about music. Sometimes a good song can really unlock something that you didn't know how to get out yourself. I have a lot of feedback from fans about that song, and they just say as soon as they heard it, it just took them back to their own grandma dying, and it helped them have a good cry, you know, and process those feelings that they didn't realize they were still holding on to, some of that sadness that was still inside them. So yeah, it's nice to know sometimes that what you've been through and what you've written about, just the very act of sharing that story in a very vulnerable way can help other people feel like what they are going through or what they've been through is that, you know, that they weren't alone.
The actual act of recording the song, what was that like in the studio? Because again, it is such an emotional song and it's a beautiful performance. Was it a difficult song to actually record?
I think, I mean, gosh, it was a long time ago. I can't really remember, but I think that I do remember trying to channel the original emotion of when I wrote the song. I guess there's always a distance between writing the song and actually recording it. So I was, yeah, it was definitely quite an emotional time, because when you've written a song and you're trying to go back into that headspace, it's like, yeah, it's a sad place to just make yourself go into over and over again.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to play it for your grandmother while she was still alive?
I didn't. No, I didn't. But I played it to everybody else in the family, and I think it was cathartic for them.
Yeah. What was that like for you, waiting for their reaction?
I think I always feel very vulnerable. Like I never sit there and watch somebody as they're listening to my song. I feel like that's a bit weird. So like, what do you think? What do you think? Are you crying? So I usually I send my songs and I just kind of leave them with them and let them listen in their own time. And
right.
Yeah, I think out of any song I've ever written, that's the one that people usually bring me back in tears. Or so thanks very much for just making me having to pull over on the highway and have a good old sob.
We spoke, we had a quick conversation last week, and we were talking about when your grandmother was being cared for, and the role that music played. And while you didn't specifically play music to her to help, I guess, trigger the old memories, but I think you were saying that there was a couple of songs or a couple of artists that when she was played, she would react well to. Is that the case?
Yeah, well, she particularly loved all the old war songs, and Vera Lynn was her favourite, like all of Vera Lynn's songs. So I don't know how much she listened to that in the home, but I do know that they used to have these. I think it was Music Fridays or something, and my auntie went to visit her on one of those Music Fridays, and they got up together and they sang. What's that song? Watch as I wave goodbye, or something like that. They got up and they sung that together, and it was a really special moment because, like I said, that's where her memories were the freshest. So
right.
My auntie and her dancing together to that song, I think she had just never been happier than when she was back there in those old wartime songs, and waltzing. She just used to waltz all the time with my grandpa songs. So you can just tell they close their eyes and dance, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
to see my grandma dance.
There's another line in the song. She's back again through summers past, the smell of the rain and freshly cut grass. Seems those ordinary days are the ones that last. What do you mean by that in that line?
Oh, it's just that it was just amazing to me how clear the memories were from back in the day. Like when I used to sit with her in the hospital, and she'd talk about those days like they were just yesterday, and she couldn't remember yet. Like she couldn't remember literally yesterday, but she could remember those days, down to smells and the fine details, and it was as though all of that had become crystal clear, and everything else kind of blurry. So that's what those lines are about.
Right. You mentioned earlier that fans will come up to you and talk to you about songs, and quite often Cooling of the Embers will be one of the ones that's really stayed with them. How have you witnessed music helping people, either through ill health or just help heal people as they're going through things? Have you seen certain examples of whether it's fans talking to you, or have you seen it in other parts of society?
Yeah, I've had so many amazing encounters with fans, and letters from fans who have told me how much certain songs have meant to them. It kind of amazes me. I mean, I've had quite a lot of people tell me about, being sick in hospital and using an album to play over and over again to really get them through, and how my music kind of became like this friend that was a constant. There's a song called Night Minds that I have that's about depression, and it's about being there for somebody you love who has depression, and basically saying to them, I know how you feel. I've been there too, and I can be there with you and hold you in that space. And I do get a lot of people tell me that they really respond to that song because they can relate to what it's about. They can relate to the depression and being in that dark space, and it's nice to have somebody put into words something that you've never really been able to articulate yourself.
Absolutely.
And I had one mother tell me that her child was terminally ill in hospital, and she used to go in every day and listen to my music with her child, and they had certain songs together that they'd always listen to in the car, and so my music was their way of bonding with each other and showing each other love. It was like that was their point of connection while her child was in hospital, and it's just so heartbreaking to hear, but I'm just so so humbled when I hear those kind of stories.
Yeah. What does it mean to you? Well, you mentioned that it's humbling to hear those sorts of stories, but when you're actually writing songs, are you conscious that a song may have that kind of impact on someone, or do you try and just block that out and write the song as you feel it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm never conscious of that. You can't be conscious of anything other than trying to express your own emotions when you write a song. It's got to be a selfish pursuit. Otherwise, it's not going to be a genuine expression. So I just write about stuff that I need to get out of me, because that's the urgent stuff. It's the stuff that you can't possibly keep in. You need to find a way to get it out, or it's going to tear you apart. So I just use it as a way to process the world around me and make everything, small enough to manage for 4 minutes.
Are there artists or songs that have helped you in various times throughout your life that have helped heal you with whatever you may have been going through?
Oh God, yeah. Especially through my teenage years, I really clung onto albums like they were a lifeline.
Right.
And a form of identity too. Like I remember Sarah McLachlan loving her early albums when I was a teenager, because she was a female and she was so cool. She had short hair. That's why I cut off all my hair when I was young. And she played the piano, and she was like her own singer-songwriter. She wasn't this kind of pop-tart that had been dressed up by someone else and was shoved out onto stage. She was writing her own songs and owning herself, and I don't know, I think she was really, really important for me, forming my own sense of self. And yeah, lots of other artists whose lyrics I just remember reading the liner notes and the lyrics inside the sleeve just on my bed, and
Right.
just absorbing every single word, and probably had no idea what they were talking about, but I still felt like it was all written for me,
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff it helps you. It really is like, it's a friend. It's a way of processing emotions that are just a little bit too difficult to process without it.
Is that still the case today for you?
I think now I listen maybe a bit more to classical music it's more non-lyrical stuff, I think, maybe because what I do is lyrics, so I hone in too much on that. So I need to listen to music that's really, really different from my own, and so I can just kind of zone out. And I don't feel like I'm so much kind of reaching for music and grappling like with the who am I questions anymore. I feel like it's more just like I need 5 minutes to just not think about like lunch boxes and school runs, and it's like I need, I just need to stop. That's what I need. Stop for like 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Missy, you mentioned that you'd be happy to take any questions from the audience if anyone had any. I should have flagged this with you all before the interview, but is there any anyone who would like to ask Missy a question? Nope, that's all right.
You've done too good of a job. You've asked them all.
Missy, thanks so much for joining us. I guess I'll ask you one last thing,
worries.
and not to put you on the
Okay.
spot, but this is all about launching the Shareasong campaign. If you were to share a song with a loved one over the next month or so, can you think of a song that you would share with someone?
I think I would. I've been listening to Fleur de Lis, the classical song lately, and I actually have been sharing that with a lot of people because it's the one that I have been playing over and over again. I actually send it to my sister saying this is really good to block out the kids during dinner time.
Whatever gets you through.
And she's like, awesome, thank you. This is exactly what I need. So we both got our noise cancelling headphones listening to Fleur de Lis.
Love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Missy, thank you so much for your time. Big round of applause for Missy.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks
Really
so much.
appreciate it. Have a great night.
See ya, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Rod. And so that concludes the event tonight, but we have DJ D-Funk on the roof who's going to spin some beats for you, a couple of drinks and nibbles. So thank you for being such an awesome audience. And again, apologies, I forgot to come to you for questions with the panelists, but I think they're all still here. So maybe if you did have a question, you can just have a conversation instead. But thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.